Welcome to Canada's Entrepreneur, where we talk to the entrepreneurs who are making it happen across Canada and deliver the news, trends, knowledge, and opinions from entrepreneurs and business influencers across the country. Hi, everybody. I'm Phil Bliss, founder and CEO of Canada's Entrepreneur. Today, we're going to meet Stan Osius, a strategic consultant with Schooley Mitchell. Schooley Mitchell is the largest independent cost reduction consulting firm in North America, with offices from coast to coast in the United States and Canada, and is actually from Canada. On average, when they are deployed by business owners, they reduce essential business service expenses by almost 30%, and they've delivered $1 billion plus in documented savings to clients to date. Stan is actually an old friend of mine who was a pretty accomplished tech executive before returning to entrepreneurship and partnering with Schooley Mitchell. Stan, welcome to Canada's Entrepreneur.
Thanks, Phil.
Well, we do know each other, so I will say that, okay? But I think it's really, let's dive into it right away. Tell everyone about your journey so far, how you learned about entrepreneurship, got the corporate bug, then came back to entrepreneurship, and teamed up with Schooley Mitchell. So over to you.
Yeah, I guess a good way to approach this is just to tell you kind of the arc of my career a little bit and how I got started. So I'm from New York. I grew up in New York City. My introduction to entrepreneurship was probably when I was about 15 years old in junior high school, and I got a pocket money job working at this school of economics in Manhattan. I grew up in Queens, and going to Manhattan is exciting and thrilling. And I had this fantastic, kind of evening school job selling coffee and snacks to students at my parents' economics institute called the Henry George School of Social Science. And it's in this fantastic brownstone building in the Upper East Side of Manhattan with all these luxury brownstones just 2 blocks away from Central Park and in between Madison Avenue and Park Avenue.
Wow.
Just a great place to spend your time. And, years later, I looked at this building and I happened to see it for sale. And the building was for sale for like $60 million in 2017.
Wow.
This fantastic building. It had like a spiral staircase and beautiful, kind of garden in the roof.
And a Gilded Age thing by the sound.
It was. It wasn't in that great a shape when we were there, but it was really, really nice. And I used to go there after school and I would sell these cakes and coffee. And I learned a valuable lesson at that time because I was a little bit greedy and I kept cutting down the size of my cakes to make more money, smaller and smaller. And nobody ever complained, but they kind of stopped buying them. So I learned a lesson in value marketing at that point in time, where you really have to satisfy your clientele. And, from there, I kind of had a bug about running a business, and I got a summer job working at a summer camp. Rather than being a camp counselor, I ran the canteen, the staff lounge. So it was like a candy store operator, an ice cream parlor, and staff lounge. And I had 4 staff. I was, between 17 and 20 years old, and I had a staff of 4, and we would basically sell a lot of fun stuff, and entertain our 150 person staff at this camp. It was about a 600 person staff in camp in Western Massachusetts, just a beautiful location. And, that was kind of my entree to business, and after university, I got a job as a kind of a product manager in a computer peripherals distribution shop business in New York City, in Queens. And as a side kind of project, I opened a little business called Optimum Computer Systems, which the initials are OCS, which is kind of like the pronunciation of my last name, OCS. So, that was basically, kind of building and selling, these Taiwanese PC clones, that were available back then, entering the market when Taiwan was making its presence felt as a PC powerhouse. And I would install like a flat file database and sell it to a few businesses. And I made a little bit of money on the side there, but it gave me some experience in trying to market the business. Anyway, I wound up moving to Canada and doing my MBA up here, and that's when I kind of entered the corporate world, and I worked for a series of multinational corporations over a 25, 30-year, time span. And I was a big corporate, kind of middle manager for a long time. I was developing products and, running teams and traveling all over the world and stuff. And after, a long time of doing that and having considerable success, I was feeling a little bit, burned out and needing of a change. And I wound up going and working for the National Research Council Industrial Research Assistance Program, where I became an industrial technology advisor, kind of leveraging the experience that I had as a business practitioner and as a marketer and a technology developer, and helping small and medium-sized businesses to innovate and to contribute to their long-term success by investing in innovation. So I became a director in the IRAP program, which is pretty famous in certain circles within Canada. A lot of people know of IRAP as a great, source of funding, non-refundable funding. So businesses usually come for the money, but then they realize after the fact that it's the advisory support, it's the networking between the businesses and so on. And when I got into that was about 10 years ago. I really enjoyed. I got a thrill from being a participant in the Canadian entrepreneurial ecosystem, helping to contribute to businesses as they grow, giving them some technology advice, providing them funding, and just basically participating in the journey of entrepreneurs, in their success. And one of the nice things about that is that, you can tell people, this is what you should do this, that, and the other thing. And then I'd go away and then I'd come back and I'd say, did you do this, that, and the other thing? And I didn't actually have to do the work, it was just kind of great. But of course, there was considerable amount of work in that as well. And one of the things about that is I spent most of my career as a big corporate participant, like a middle manager in a big corporation, with a lot of responsibilities, a lot of exposure to different things. But I wasn't really an entrepreneur, so I wound up leaving IRAP and going to work for a startup as the VP of marketing and business development for a technology company called Tenstorrent, which has subsequently done fantastically well. It's raised, like $2 billion and has like 700 people working for it and stuff. But I was in the formative stage of developing a direction for that technology. I don't want to take too much credit, but the company is doing well. And it was a great experience helping to, kind of promote this AI semiconductor technology that's really become, part of the central fabric of our economy right now. So all of those things have been great.
It's a very interesting story. I mean, you've really, come from, New York and had that kind of entrepreneurial sort of upbringing, and then into the blue chips, I know the AMDs, the NEC, the big names, and that career, and then into government, and and hanging out with entrepreneurs, building companies, and that must have been fun. But now you're back being an entrepreneur, and you made that step into Schooley Mitchell, which you can tell people a little bit about. But
Sure.
I think that people would be interested to know that you're, obviously Schooley Mitchell's founded in Canada, in Stratford, but you have a kind of interesting role there. But tell everyone about this next step in your entrepreneurial life versus your corporate life, if you like.
Yeah, I think that to bridge that, it's helpful to know what Schooley Mitchell is. So Schooley Mitchell is an organization, a company that helps businesses to improve their financial position by saving money on their routine business expenses. Just about every business entity has recurring business expenses, things like their shipping, their waste, their telecommunications, software subscriptions, a whole bunch of kind of non-strategic but important necessities, types of things that don't necessarily, help a business to be competitive, but they're needed in order to operate, right? So these are the types of things that companies spend a significant proportion of their operating expenses on, and about 80% of companies overpay for some subset of those services, not because they're inattentive, but because they're focused on the things that make their business work. They're focused on the priorities that they have, and it's just almost impossible to stay on top of everything all the time, so that you're monitoring all of the changes in these expenses and so on. So Schooley Mitchell helps businesses to save money by renegotiating and helping them, through, their financial management of their operating expenses. So when I talked about the IRAP part of my career, where I was helping and getting a thrill out of helping these small businesses to succeed, that was one of the more satisfying parts of my career. I found, working for AMD and working for Apple and working for these big multinational corporations with cutting edge technology was the most thrilling. But there's two sides of that. It's the most anxiety inducing, and then the most thrilling, because you overcome these challenges, and that kind of, combination, is fantastic. When I was helping small businesses to achieve and to thrive, I got a really good satisfaction out of participating in a diversity of business, knowing about and learning and problem solving with a bunch of different companies and different industries. And when I was looking to do something in my next phase of my career, pretty much my retirement phase of my career, I thought I'd like to do something that has the same quality of contribution to the business community and to the economy around me. How do I, kind of bring the knowledge that I've gleaned over the course of my career and help other businesses to succeed and to thrive? And one way to do that is by having a consulting practice, which I do. And this consulting practice is augmented by having, a very tangible, beneficial service, which is to help companies to save money and to effectively make money by reducing the amount of money they spend on services that they don't need to overpay for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, that sort of, that's the reason you got there, but now you've been working there for a while. You've got a foot in Toronto. You've got a foot down in the States, in Florida. I mean, what's the day to day? I mean, how, I think, people are probably interested, but it's that day to day thing of entrepreneurship, within a franchise operation. What's your perspective? You've really seen true entrepreneurship, corporate life. What's this in your perspective? What makes it, because you've been doing it for a while, what makes it interesting and rewarding for you?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things there. One is, it is, kind of motivating to help other businesses to succeed by helping them with their costs. But part of the approach that Schooley Mitchell and I, as a Schooley Mitchell consultant, take is to use a referral marketing type approach in our business. So we don't do a lot of brand advertising, for example. Most people have never even heard of expense reduction as a business type. So introducing our service to businesses takes a certain amount of, trust, because when you say to somebody, I could help you save money, and there's no risk for us to actually do this on your behalf, people are a little bit wary. We actually offer the service, which is to analyze people's expenses at no cost. We do a comprehensive report where we deliver a negotiated, committed price to them for the services that they have based on them giving us, authorization to negotiate on their behalf. We do that, provide a detailed report, all for no cost. And then if the client chooses to pursue or to accept our recommendations, then we take a share of the savings as our fee. So there's no upfront or incremental cost to their business. We're effectively doing this in a sense for nothing, because the only fee that we have comes out of the savings that we generate for clients through our analysis work. And that's a great approach. And most people, when they hear about it, they say, wow, that's fantastic. But when you introduce that service to people for the first time, they're often a little bit wary. It's like, this sounds too good to be true. I don't know you. So how do I know that this is on the level? So we basically go about and I go about my marketing of this business by developing referral relationships with other like-minded business owners who have the same type of clientele. So I'm a member of a number of associations and business groups where I have colleagues and other professionals that I interact with on a daily and weekly basis, who also have services that are offered to similar types of clients. And we typically, try to identify, business, clientele who can use our respective services. So a big part of my day-to-day life is helping other businesses like myself to identify clients that are of mutual interest to us, so that we can help them in our own way. So I have clients, for example, who can take advantage of, one of my colleagues has a currency exchange business. Most businesses, for example, are overpaying for currency translation if they're doing business in the United States or in other countries. And the banks charge probably several percentage points higher than they would need to. And we could save them a lot of money by doing that. So even though that's not my own service, I could recommend, my colleague who does that type of savings for a business as well.
What kind of scale is Schooley Mitchell? I mean, how big is it? How long's it been
That's a
here?
great question. So there's about 300 or so different consultants, or 350, right across Canada and the United States, which is where we do business, in, urban centers and rural centers, basically all over the place. And then we have a head office that's in Stratford, Ontario, which is where the company was founded. And they have, I don't know, between 150, 175 people that are dedicated, a big proportion of those are dedicated to actually doing what we call the production work. So my basic role is I own the business. I have my own clients. I do the customer acquisition, the needs assessment, the overall relationship management, making sure that I understand their needs and delivering the service adequately and making sure that they're satisfied with it. But the actual work of negotiating, identifying vendors that could provide the services at the best cost, those types of things are managed by our head office team that has dedicated experts in each of these subject matter areas. So, for example, we have 14 different categories of expenditure that that are broad categories that we look at. For example, facility supplies, telecommunications, shipping. All of these are categories. Another big one for us, in addition to waste disposal, is electronics payment processing, or credit card merchant services. We have a team of people that's dedicated to that. There's hundreds of different vendors all over the place that are providing these services. We identify the ones that are best, and we manage that kind of understanding through our expert team in the head office. So it's really a balance between what I as a consultant do in the field with my clients, and then I have services that are provided to me by our expert team back in Stratford.
That's very interesting. And you really enjoy the relationship, and I guess you're still an entrepreneur, because it's a pretty independent lifestyle from
Yeah, very much so. I mean, one of the advantages, I think that it's interesting to talk about what is a franchise and why is it advantageous. I mean, this is an entrepreneur uh, podcast. You know, we're actually talking to people who are either considering or in business. And one of the advantages of a franchise organization is that there's a model that you could follow. So there's always risk involved in any startup type of venture where you're building a business. And one of the advantages of buying into a franchise organization is that you could take advantage of a tried and true model that's proven itself, and you don't have to invent the wheel. You just have to be able to operate it effectively. That's not to say that it's necessarily easy to do, because running a business, even if there's a methodology that's been established, it takes some business skill in order to do it effectively. So the franchise organization like Schooley Mitchell will look for capable, business operators like myself. And then a business operator like myself looks for a capable, organization that has a very good model, that has a methodology as well as a service or a product that's worth buying, and it's kind of a mutual relationship that way.
Okay, so that's really good, Stan. I kind of love the progression. It's very interesting. We're coming to the end, but let's have a couple of fun things. What book are you currently reading, or podcast listening to that you would recommend to the audience that's really helped you in the last 4 or 5 years, kind of thing?
Well, there's a lot of them. I'm reading this book now called Gap Selling. It's a business book that I really like a lot. And it really talks about understanding your client's business thoroughly, and I find that to be a really good one. It's written by an author named Keenan. It's not this year's book, but I think it was written not too long ago. I also like nonfiction books, like Fareed Zakaria has a book on the Age of Revolutions, which is fantastic, a good read. In this time of political turmoil, it's interesting to get a perspective on that.
Yeah.
And then I just finished a book about the rise and fall of RIM, Losing the Signal, which was really interesting. Sean Silkoff wrote that. And
Yes.
I read novels for fun as well. I like Michael Connolly's Harry Bosch series, so I read those all the time.
Are you a morning or a night person?
I'm more of a morning person. I go to sleep probably around 11:30 and wake up around 6, and I go to the gym in the morning, and that's kind of my routine, is start with a workout and then jump into business around 9:30 or so. So the 9 o'clock meetings are a little bit early for me because I'm usually at the gym.
If you had to pick one word to describe yourself, what would it be, and why would you choose it?
Yeah, I'd say that most my kids and my family would probably say I'm very logical. So I tend to be very systematic in my way of thinking about things, and try to go things in a step-by-step kind of manner. So I'd say that's probably my claim to fame to some extent.
And apart from everything that's keeping us all up at night, what's keeping you up at night these days?
No, I try to be kind of stress-free in my life. I keep things in perspective. I do, give a lot of thought to the changing economic environment in Canada, and how, for example, the new trade war that we've embarked upon, not by choice, but by our proximity to the United States, is definitely something that has got me engaged. But like anything, there's opportunities as well as challenges in any change of this kind. So, to a certain extent, the discomfort, of the trade situation between Canada and the United States. And we were talking about this in May of 2025. I don't know how long this podcast will be around for, but there's still a lot of uncertainties around what will happen with the economy with these kind of changes. So that's got me concerned in a way, but it also, presents opportunities. For example, I'm in a business where we're helping businesses that are, threatened by uncertainty or threatened by changes in their economic model to deal with those kind of things. And because we provide a service that allows companies to reduce their expenses in a relatively painless way, it allows them to avoid having to do more painful things, particularly when there's uncertainty. A company might be looking at, a downturn in their business because of, their cost of inputs going up, or because their margins are shrinking because of the price can't manage, an increase, because there's a certain elasticity of demand for the products that they sell if they're exporters, or perhaps they're selling to companies who are exporters, and therefore their market's getting eroded a little bit, and they can't, necessarily deal with those price changes effectively. We can help them to reduce the cost of operating their business in a way that's extremely painless, because they're already, paying for these services, and we could usually help a company save, close to 30% on the expenses that they have in these particular areas that we cover, without them having to compromise the services that they have. So that's kind of the nature of the business that I'm in. So when you ask, what's the satisfaction of operating in this particular way, it's thrilling when business owners or leaders of businesses are challenged by these kind of things, and we come with a solution like that. So yes, there's sleeplessness to a certain extent, but I look at the positive side of it and hope that I can take advantage of those circumstances.
Great session, Stan. Been really good. Thanks for explaining your story and relating it into the Schooley Mitchell opportunity. And I think it's very, very interesting.
Thanks. Great talking to you.
We talk to the entrepreneurs who are making it happen across Canada and deliver the news, trends, knowledge, and opinions from entrepreneurs and business influencers across the country.